start the recording and share my screen. Can everybody see my screen okay? Okay, so we'll get started. Thank you everybody for being here. Good afternoon. Welcome to our first Renaissance Roundtable. I kind of like to think of this series as a cousin to our seminar series, our evening seminars that we do once a month that you might be familiar with. But think more casual conversations, digestible kind of snippets of projects while some of us may be eating lunch or taking a break from a busy work day to hear about some cool things that are going on in Sullivan County. It is really great to see a lot of familiar faces here and also some faces and names that I don't recognize who might be new to Sullivan Renaissance. So that's exciting. For those of you who are new here, I just wanted to mention that Sullivan Renaissance, we were founded in 2000 by Sandra Gary and to fulfill her mission of making Sullivan County a beautiful, vibrant, healthy place to live. And it started as small grants for community groups to plant gardens and flowers. And it's grown to 3 really robust grant programs with a variety of grants under those umbrellas that we have from $500 to $350,000 annually, plus an awesome volunteer and intern program, horticultural and technical assistance, and so much more. We have our team is on this call. We have Denise Frangipani, our executive director. Hi, Denise.
Hello.
We have
hi, everyone.
Hi, Amanda. We also have, I just saw Amanda too. We have Anne Louise, who's our volunteer program manager, Carmela, who is our beautification program manager, Christy, I saw Christy here, our Healthy Communities program manager, and Alan, who is our newest addition to the team. He's our beautification coordinator. So he works on a ton of beautification projects and outreach throughout the community. So I think that's our team here. I don't think I missed anyone. So really great team we have, and we're here to help in any way that you might need. So in addition to the work that I mentioned that we do, community engagement, discourse, and education are at the heart of everything that we do here. And that's kind of why we've curated this program today to kick off our Renaissance Roundtable series. May is National Historic Preservation Month, as designated by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. The 2022 theme is People Saving Places, and we are very fortunate to have a lot of people saving places in our little community here. So we're going to be talking. Before we dive in, I do just want to take a moment to reflect on what preservation is. People often have this kind of image in their head that it's preserving a building almost in like a museum state, just for telling the history or just for history's sake, which is fine, but there's so much more to preservation than that. And I think the people that we have sharing their projects today really embody that kind of ethos. So this quote I really like as a definition for preservation from Michael Tomlin. He was my grad mentor, my grad school mentor and advisor. And this is from his book, that preservation is a social campaign concerned with the character, condition, use, and treatment of the physical world around us. These historic structures are in the water and in landscapes of every kind, rural, urban, suburban, and even sparsely settled forests and deserts. This social campaign enlists and engages people who are dedicated to extending the legacy and the usefulness of existing buildings, structures, and sites. And I think like I said before, in Sullivan County, we are so fortunate to have an abundance of these dedicated people that are extending the use of our historic buildings and landscapes. Some that you may know and some who you might be meeting for the first time today. So who are these people? We have 5 panelists with us today to talk about some really exciting projects that they're working on. I would like to introduce Jill Wire from the Sullivan County Land Bank. We have Nicole Valance, who has two projects she's going to be talking about, the Mueller Road Farmhouse project, as well as the Calhoun Depot project, which she's with the Calhoun Business Association, and that kind of started there. Neil Hitch with Bethel Woods, the museum at Bethel Woods. Jean Martin, who's with Healthy Kids Daycare, and Tyler Barnett, who is with the Hillig Castle property. So I will introduce them as we go. And we're going to start with Jill. Jill is a lifelong resident of Monticello, and she's the Deputy Commissioner of Sullivan County Planning and Community Development. She's also the Executive Director of the Sullivan County Land Bank Corporation. I know she'll tell you more about the land bank, but land banks in general are a really interesting and unique tool for redeveloping historic properties. So I think what she's doing with the land bank from that perspective is really exciting. So I'll let you take it away, Jill.
Okay, thanks, Shannon.
You're muted, Jill. There we go.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Shannon. The Sullivan County Land Bank was created in 2017 with the mission to tackle vacant, abandoned, and tax delinquent properties. So we typically acquire our properties through the municipal foreclosure process and have been working since 2017 on a variety of different projects. We have about 60 properties that we've had in our inventory, and we've cycled some of those through. But a couple of them are much larger projects and are really exciting that we were able to acquire them and are focused on preservation. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And so I'm going to go over three, and I only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to be pretty quick, but happy to answer any additional questions or go over any more at any time. We have a website, sullivancountylandbank.org, where you can see some other projects and see what other things we're working on. But the first property is Monticello Manor. It is the abandoned hospital on High Street that has been vacant for maybe 30 years now. It's been through several different ownerships. It was in the foreclosure process at the county, and right when we were about to foreclose on it, the owner went into bankruptcy, and so that tied it up and kept it vacant and unutilized since 2011. So once the county was able to proceed with foreclosure, it was transferred to the land bank. So now the land bank has site control and can work to make sure what happens at the site is what the community wants. So we are in the process of working with Kearney Redevelopment Group and RUPCO Housing Corporation to do a housing tax credit project. So they are working utilizing historic tax credits and brownfield tax credits and the housing tax credits to redevelop the site for approximately 70 affordable housing units. So the land bank, while we hold it, we typically just kind of help to secure it and stabilize it. So we've done some boarding and securing of the property. We do have a $500,000 remediation grant where we're going to do some soil remediation, and then we'll turn it over to the developer to renovate it. So one exciting project that we're working on. And then another one is the Broadway Theater project. This is a theater on Broadway. We think it was very crucial for the land bank to acquire it. Sullivan County has limited theaters. Well, we have a lot of theaters, but no movie theaters. This was last used as a movie theater probably 20, 30 years ago. And so we are now trying to identify a developer. We think it's crucial to save this. It's a important anchor for downtown Monticello. We'll help to activate it, 24 hours over the weekend and everything. So really excited about working with this. We have a $60,000 feasibility study. That's right. Liberty is also being renovated. So it's important to save our Main Street theaters because we want people downtown and they are a crucial anchor. So we have a task force working on a feasibility study to identify what can happen here in the theater, and then hopefully identify a developer that will take over and bring it to life. So, And then last but not least, which was the cover slide, so thanks for the additional props, is the Jaeger Mansion, the Spanish Castle in Liberty. This cycled through the foreclosure process several times, so it was great that the land bank was able to acquire it. We've done, we had a volunteer day with Renaissance, which was important to kind of clean it up and show people the beautiful building that we didn't even know we had in downtown Liberty. It was originally built as a 3-family home, so now we're just looking to figure out what we can do with it and how we can reactivate it. What's the best use for it? So we'd really like to see it preserved. We used some Renaissance funding to do some of the decorative boarding so that, you know, it looked on the picture on the right kind of shows how it's boarded, but it kind of maintains the look of the historical building. So it kind of is cool that way. But really, again, the land bank is just kind of holding it, trying to keep it clean, keep it stabilized until we can identify that developer and use the historic tax credits and really help to preserve these assets here in our community so that we don't lose them. It would be great to see this. And then this one is last. This is Broadway redevelopment. This links with the Monticello Manor project, the first one. The land bank acquired both 430 Broadway and 418 Broadway, the Key Bank building. And there's my 5-minute timer saying that we can stabilize these 2 key anchor buildings on the block between Landfield Avenue and Bank Street. And then this will couple with the Monticello Manor to bring those over 70 units. So we're investing heavily into downtown Monticello. We think it's important to save these structures. You really can't build like these nowadays affordably. So the more we can keep these great historic buildings and renovate them, the better. So we'll keep you posted on how these turn out. So thank you.
Thanks, Jill, and I'm sure you'll have some questions later. No, that's great. That's exciting. You know, as a former Monticello resident, and I know you're a Monticello resident, I know it's important that the downtown Monticello and downtown Liberty are key focuses of the land bank. So it's exciting to see the projects kind of coming to fruition that, you know, a couple of years ago, I just remember you talking about like, hey, it'd be really cool to say Broadway Theater, and now you're doing it. So that's exciting. So next, I want to move on to Neil Hitch. Hi, Neil. Dr. Neil Hitch is the senior curator at the museum at Bethel Woods, and he is a historian, a preservation architect, a museum specialist, and a musician who has been working for over 25 years in developing historic sites and museums. So he's going to demonstrate how historic preservation isn't always just about buildings, but landscapes and events as well. So Neil, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. This is great. Well, one of the things that I think is interesting about me, maybe about me being at Bethel Woods, is you would assume that the senior curator at Bethel Woods Center for the Arts had a specialty in maybe, I don't know, the 60s or music of the 60s, which I do have experience in that, but my specialty really, my degree is in architecture, and I worked for many years in historic preservation prior to becoming a museum director and moving kind of a change in that career. But what happens at Bethel Woods is, after 2019, when the site hit its 50th anniversary, it becomes historic according to the federal government. And though it received designation and listing on the National Register of Historic Places in 2017, it's really the 2019 mark that kicks in a lot of stuff as far as federal and state grants and kind of management through SHPO. And then just personally, I think the next 50 years really of what happens at this site, how the site is interpreted for the several next generations, will depend on the historic preservation work that we do over the next couple of years. If we go on to the next slide, that the festival itself, as we just saw, is known as is important for this 3-day event. At the time was the largest mass gathering in the United States of people to hear music. And it really kind of set the modern festival of what would happen at a modern festival. And when I say that, it proved, though historically, I think the story is Woodstock lost money, it proved that there is commercial viability for an outdoor festival with outdoor camping. So we saw that picture of the mass of people, but after the people leave, what's left? And this is what's left. What's left is, garbage. Though, according to the contract, Woodstock Ventures cleaned the site. The site was to be left as it existed prior to the festival. And then I think what we see is it did operate as a farm for decades after that. If we go to the next slide, you can see that in 2017, this is the footprint of the historic site. It's just under 300 acres. Many of that was the Asger Farm site. Festival field there is kind of the key place that we interpret outside of the museum. Also areas across the street, the Performers area, the Best Road Camping, Perry Road Camping, Hog Farm, and the Bindi Woods also all included in the footprint of the historic site. If we go to the next slide, in many ways, the site is being preserved as a park-like landscape. You can see this picture taken in 1969 and then the location in 2002. That much of the landscape itself has been preserved. You can walk around the site and look at the pictures of the 3-day event, and really it's pretty easy to see where those are located. The largest asset then from a historic preservation standpoint has been the preservation of the view sheds around the site. And that has been very successful to this point. And I hope that we would continue to operate with that as one of the largest kind of preservation theories at the site. If we go on to the next slide, we'll also see that, again, some of this work happened before the 50th, but after the 50th, this is now part of the procedure of doing kind of any work here is fulfilling a requirement from the State Historic Preservation Office of archaeological survey. So this is an ongoing work. We did this work last year. We will continue to do this work in June. In June, we will have 2 weeks of a archaeological field school at Binghamton University that will be a pilot project, the first of that type of project to happen on the site. We're excited about that. If we go on, we'll see here, this is part of the archaeological work or some of the mapping and studies that have been done, this in particular in Bindi Woods, where we've been actively since 2020 trying to map pictures of the site at the locations they are, and then flag these locations as areas to be preserved. And then we move to, I think this is and this is an active following from that work in 2020. This is a current small exhibit we have up, which is really trying to interpret how these pictures are important to both what we do and how they're important to our visitor experience. So this is now a behind the scenes tour that you can take. It's a $15 tour you take on a golf cart, take around the site with a docent. Part of what we are doing on that tour is talking about preservation and historic preservation at the site. Then the last one we have here is really looking at what are the concepts of historic preservation. For most of the history of the Asger Farm site, it's a farm, it's a working farm. The field was a hay field, then it was planted in corn in 1970. But why it's significant is this 3-day festival. That is why it's significant historically, is what happened in those 3 days really defined a generation known as the Woodstock generation that went on many aspects to change the world in the 70s and 80s, whether you think they changed that for good or bad. So I think the active preservation strategy is to continue the ethos of that, or the idea of what the use was, which is kind of an exciting carnival, festival, music atmosphere. And I think that is what we are creating at Bethel Woods, what was created at Bethel Woods, what we are trying to create, and what we are trying to expand on a festival, especially as we move forward with creating or utilizing the space for more festival type of activities with camping. I think personally that's the way to preserve the site. If the site can become used for camping for these kind of larger events, that what will happen is the site, its historic use will be the use that preserves the site. And that's what I have. We'll see. This is an ongoing discussion and something that is exciting. Again, looking at, this is a picture of Mysteryland taken in 2016 versus an aerial of the 2069 or the 1969 festival. I'm always a little bit amazed at how close kind of the Mysteryland as a festival replicated what was done at the original Woodstock.
When you sent me these images, the side by side of it is so fascinating. So I appreciate your comments on that, and that you're preserving this in an interesting way. So we appreciate your commentary on that. We have Nicole Valance. Nicole's going to chat about two projects today, and I'll let her talk about them. Nicole is the principal for Unbalanced Design. She's a partner with the Mueller Road Farmhouse Project, which you'll hear about, and president of the Calhoun Business Association. She's a designer with a background in operations, in-house production, and marketing from construction, accounting, and commercial real estate brokerage industries. So she has her freelance business as well, Unbalanced Design, and she has a varied portfolio of projects encompassing graphic design, branding, identity, events planning, and all that stuff. So she works with the Hurleyville Performing Arts Center now, as well as one of her clients, and she's restoring a historic farmhouse and also the Calhoun Depot project. So I want to let her chat about those. Nicole, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi guys, thanks for having me. Yeah, so the Calhoun Depot project's been a many-year endeavor. It grew out of this ad hoc group of community volunteers in 2017 who saw an opportunity to reactivate the train yard. It had been serving as an office for the New York Central and Susquehanna Railroads for several years, a seasonal office, and then they decided to consolidate their offices and move up to deposits. So the railway was just kind of, the depot was just kind of sitting there. So we identified this need to, do something really productive for the community, because it sits right in the middle of our two main streets. For years and years and years, the CBA, which is the Calhoun Business Association, and other community organizations had been utilizing the loading dock essentially as a stage and a staging place for various events in the community. So it really seemed this would be a great location to be able to do, say, a community commons or some type of community place to be able to activate. So the railway was, yeah, there we go. And I believe these photos you're looking at are from really early 20th century. The railway, the Erie station was originally built in the late 1840s. I believe it was 1848, and then was part of the Great Fire in the later half of the 19th century, and then rebuilt in the late 1890s. So this would be the structure after it was rebuilt, with the beautiful clay tiles on the roof that you can see. I believe there's a second one, a profile view on the third slide. And then, yeah, you can see what it was from mid 20th century. And then this was just a few years ago at the bottom, side by side. So it's retained a lot of its historical character. So the original plan was that we were just going to do the courtyard and try to do kind of community square so that we could have events, maybe rehabilitate the restrooms for public use. And then in 2018, the Upper Delaware Scenic Byway actually came to us and said, hey, we have this grant, we'd love to establish a visitor center. And then the partnership between the two entities really took off. At that point, the ad hoc committee of volunteers had partnered with the Calhoun Business Association. So the CBA and the Byway forged this partnership to see how we can leverage additional funds to be able to truly rehabilitate the building, and then create an Upper Delaware Scenic Byway Visitors Center, as well as use some of the space for a common community flex space that would be available for exhibits, both static and rotating, important to the community, ADA accessible restrooms, and then I'm going to say pergola, not pergola, a little town square in the front, and then, there will be some parking as well. But yeah, to really truly activate the space as a community resource. We think it's really important because these buildings and districts, it shows the community's heritage, character, sense of place, and they can also, help revitalize communities. We found that it's really, this project has started to instill like a sense of pride in place, and it's getting the community really engaged in coming together. So, we've been really excited. This team actually it's been pretty much the same team from 2017 on, although it's changed entities. So that's been really important. We've been really lucky to have this team of professionals. Lori, who's here, was a founding member of Callicoon Community Development way back in 2017, and we've gone through, being the CBA Depot Committee, and now it's their own 501c3 not-for-profit called Callicoon Depot Inc., which basically they're handling all the development and establishing a plan of sustainability for the management of this project. The CBA and the Depot team were able to secure a long-term lease with the railway last year that we signed, which is excellent. And then what else? So it's been a very long journey. So in doing that, the team had been able to, one, leverage the original grant, which was from DASNY, actually originally for the Upper Delaware Scenic Byways Visitor Center. And then using that, we were also able to write a USDA grant. We were successful in receiving a $100,000 USDA grant for fixtures and furniture for the site, as well as Sullivan Renaissance. We participated in their municipal partnership project with the town of Delaware, which has been incredibly supportive of the project. But we did the 2019 municipal partnership project with the town of Delaware, and we were lucky enough to actually receive the Silver Feather Prize at the end of the cycle, which the town graciously put forward that 100% of the funds was to go towards the project. So with those three primary grants and some additional donations from various community organizations and private donors, we have the budget to start breaking ground now. So this is great. The CDI, the committee, has been working on an RFP, so that should be going out. I'm sorry, RFQ, request for quote, not RFP, which will be going out very shortly, hopefully. And we're hoping to see some more movement on the ground. We've actually been working quite heavily in the background, doing all kinds of environmental impacts, structural assessments, engineering studies, parking studies, all of these very quiet things that it's a lot of paperwork and a lot of work in the background. But now that we're finally able to do some things that the public can actually see, it's really nice. After we secured the lease last year, the project development team was able to get into the depot, obviously, now that we had site control. And actually right there, you can see, oh, there's Lori. Hi, there's Lori. And to her right is John Eric Carcula, who was also a co-chair of the committee at the time, who's really heavily involved in helping with the renderings and all of the design work and the groundwork. But this, I believe, was Earth Day last year, and they had gone in just before that and were able to take down the drop ceiling and this kind of particle board wall that was there. And the volunteers basically cleaned up the space, and we were able to have these wonderful tours where people were actually able to come in, view the space, hear about the history and why it's important. So it was kind of the first round, the next round actually of community outreach, because it's super important for the plan to be informed by what's important to the community. And I believe that. And this is one of the renderings of how we would achieve ADA accessibility in the courtyard. I believe the parking plan is still up for interpretation, but this is more focused on what the interior of the building is. This is almost exactly the way that the walls are partitioned right now. The plan was never to, change it or make it, new or modern. The idea was all about restoration and bringing it up to code, of course, giving some modern amenities as far as HVAC systems and modern restrooms, plumbing and electric and all of that. But they really wanted to keep the historic character of the building, but you can see an example of how it would be laid out. The area that's blank on the left is on the right, rather, is what we call the barn right now. It's where they used to keep the freight. And I should have included a picture. There's actually this enormous freight scale that's still there and still functioning. When we get tours, we ask people to stand on it and see if we can guess how much all of us weigh. So it's kind of fun. But will probably be a phase 2. There's been some ideas about how that could be used, but the whole left half of the building can be used completely independently until then. Again, you can see the restrooms. That's where they are now. They would be upgraded and the doorways widened to make them ADA accessible. And I believe, with the exception of 1 or 2 doorways that need to be widened, almost all of the doorways are the proper width. So we won't have to take down the frames. We can keep a lot of the original work, which is great. There are these amazing, incredibly high. I think the ceilings are 13 feet in there, and the windows go almost all the way up to the top. It's really an incredible space. And then you can see all the way over to the left. We were flirting with the idea of maybe seeing if we can do a community work share in there at some point, obviously before COVID. We were talking about doing maybe a community work share, because one of the important things to the project is being able to coming up with parts of the business plan where it will be able to eventually sustain itself largely. That's really important. So they're still, kind of figuring out ideas for that, leveraging the ideas that have come up from people on the committee versus, ideas that are coming in from various members of the community. So that's all going to be taken into account. I believe they had a community survey out for the last 6 months that actually just closed last Saturday. So the results of that will be compiled and published probably in the next couple of weeks. So that's really exciting to see what kind of ideas have come in.
Yeah, that's great. I know I've had the fortune of going in there with Lori one time, and it's such a cool building. So I'm really excited for Calhoun to have that kind of, it's really an anchor right in the center of town. So that's an exciting project. And you also have more of a personal project as well that you're working on, right?
Do. And before I just close on that, can I just say anyone who's interested in more on the Depot project can visit their website at www.calhoundepot.org. So the history and all the information, and whenever we're having events for tours, will be on there.
Great. Thanks, Nicole.
No problem. And then that's my little slice. Welcome to Muller Farmhouse. Muller Farmhouse was, let's see, it was originally built in 1846 or 1848, depending on whose recollection you're taking from. So it was built by, I believe, the Bryan family. Spelling is out for, I've had 2 or 3 different from different the town and the county historians. There's some conflicting information on the family, but it's pre-Civil War. It was originally 2 stories and maybe about 2/3 the size of the house now. And then in the 1890s, actually in 1888, a farmer, Killian Muller, had come to the U.S. A lot of German immigrants were coming in at that time because there were a lot of advertising in German language newspapers following the advent, and kind of ties to the railway, because so much of the development of these towns had followed when the railroads had come into the area, and it started to become a place where people, Victorian travelers specifically, were coming up for rest and relaxation. And it was really the silver age of Catskill travel. So he had seen an opportunity. He took the farmhouse and then added another level and expanded it. And it was originally called the Fosterdale Old Stagecoach Inn. And then at some point between 1895 and early 20th century, it got renamed the Fosterdale Heights House. You can see some Victorian folk enjoying the grounds. It's it's kind of been a labor of love the last 2.5 years for renovation. Between there we go. Between when we purchased it in 2020 and when it was originally built, it had maybe passed through 3 or 4 different owners. So it had several different, it had always been used as a B&B actually since 1890 on. So it's really nice that we're able to preserve this building and continue its history of being a hospitality venue, welcoming folks to the area, letting them experience the natural beauty of the place, of this place we love. So that is it. It was definitely, I learned a lot of things about historic preservation, a lot of things about old houses and maybe not opening walls if you don't have to. So that's always a challenge, but it's a beautiful building, and we're really glad that we're able to bring back some of the historic character of it. There was a lot of changes inside that had made it a little bit more modern and up to date, and we're trying to take some of the architecture back to the original Victorian / Second Empire. So yeah, that's the Raccoon Lodge, we called it. There was a lot more taxidermy and a giant television the size of one wall on the other side when we first went in there. But that's going to be an event space that people will be able to utilize for weddings and retreats. And we're hoping that we'll be able to get open by midsummer this year. So yeah, I'm trying to think, is there anything else about the property?
That's exciting. Midsummer, that's great. And that house has a great view. I've driven past it several times, and the view coming into Canosa Lake there is just awesome. So
yeah, it is really cool. There's a couple of, it's funny, we actually had to adjust the foundation, adjust the posts at one point, and meant removing the original floors and taking those up are very interesting, especially with the hand cut nails. You have these 1890 nails that were all literally hand cut, and but we found out that it was actually the original foundation. It's just stacked bluestone on top of a giant, that bluestone boulder that you see in the bottom right now, those go completely underneath. So if you go into the basement and crawl spaces, it's boulders. It's kind of amazing just the way that these buildings were constructed, and like the stacked stone foundation was like in pristine condition when we lifted the floor up to be able to jack the house up a little bit to make the floors even again, because it had settled in kind of a sideways way. And the beams that run across are just, they're half trees across the entire. It's just really incredible. It's just, things are just not built like this anymore. So I just feel like when you get a house or a building that is in shape that you can restore it, it's just so important, because they're not going to be built like this again.
Cool. And I think we have a question from Rachel Cunningham. You want to ask your question, Rachel?
Oh. Hi everyone. I was just looking at one of the older photos of the facade of the building. Yes, I think it's the other one, the close up. So on the top right, it says Killian Mueller.
Yes.
Am I reading that correctly? So is that the same family, Killians, as in Killians and Liberty, that owned the?
I don't know.
Yeah, there was a big Killian family.
The name was the Muller. They're actually, I say Mueller because it's spelled with, it's actually the Mullers. It was Killian Muller. I don't know if if the last name was Killian, then it's probably a different family.
Okay.
They're actually, it's funny, since purchasing it, I've run into a number of the ancestors of Killian Muller. Ironically, the Ackerman, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Ackerman farm, Muller Road. They are descendants from one side of the family. And Deb Keller from Rick Keller is helping us with the windows and glass and various things. And it turns out that her family was from the other half of the family. So I'm starting to piece together the story and the history from these resources. It's kind of interesting. Wow. But I don't think it was connected. At least I haven't heard that it was connected to the Killian family.
I'm just wondering, my question really was, is there a hyphen between the name?
Killian was the first name that I'm aware of.
Okay. And Fosterdale is the Foster family, right? From the area?
That Fosterdale was, I guess, originally named after.
Foster.
Excellent. Thank you, Nicole. I appreciate that. This is a really, like I said, it's a cool project, and I'm sure the family down the road is probably thrilled that it's in capable hands and you're fixing it up. So that's exciting.
Yeah, they've been really sweet. They reached out to us, and actually one of the grandchildren is my insurance broker. So I got a lot of history on it from the Ackerman. So it's wonderful. We're excited to have them over when it's completed.
Great. So now we're gonna move on to a very different project. Jean, if you want to unmute yourself. Jean Martin is with Healthy Kids daycare programs. She's worked for Healthy Kids since 2007 in various capacities, and her latest role is in their expansion and renovation. Healthy Kids will be opening close to 100 sites throughout New York State in September of 2022. This will include programs in schools and their own standalone daycare facilities. Jean really was the driving force behind the redevelopment of the historic Monticello VFW building, which is in the Monticello Broadway National Register Historic District. So they are returning that property to productive use as a daycare facility. And so I'm going to turn it over to Jean.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. This is my first presentation like this, but it's fitting because this was my first project in my current capacity. So we had purchased the building in 2017, and at the time, we only had one building that we owned, and which was a fitness center in Orange County. We're kind of based out of here, and most of our sites were in schools before and after, including the Monticello School District. And and Jill's children attended the program, so we kind of got to know each other. And when she realized that we had purchased this building, she kind of clued us into the historic grant process, because at the time Monticello was not, they didn't have their historic district yet approved. So we kind of waited, which I'm glad we did, because the original plan that we had for this building, the renovations were like over 600,000, and it wouldn't have looked anything like this. When I started to apply for the historic grant, I had to do a lot of research on the building, and everybody that I spoke to, it was such a family-oriented building that there were Sweet 16s. Everybody that I spoke to, their grandfathers, were a founding member. Or, I mean, actually, there's a group that still meets in a library. I can't remember what library they meet at, but if you'll notice to the left, in the front of the building, there's a sign that says Veterans Memorial Hall. And actually, when I was contacting a few of the original members, they asked us if they could have that sign for their meeting place now. So we gave that to them. But the flavor of the building from everybody I spoke to was, it was a family place. There was weddings, Sweet 16s. The Memorial Day Parade was staged there. There was casino nights and bingo nights. I mean, not only did the veterans meet there, but it was very like a social thing for the families in Monticello. So we decided to keep it as an open space, because the original plan was to change the windows, make different classrooms, and but once we spoke to people, and I spoke to Derek Rohde from New York State, we realized that we're gonna keep it in as much as we can. So we kept the color. We were gonna change the colors. We even, if you go to the next one, I'm sorry. That was the original floor, which had been carpeted. So I actually learned a lot in this process, because that floor, I didn't actually put in the grant, because I was like, well, we have to do the floor. And we did a floor that didn't exist in 1950. So we had to rip up the floor and change it to the 12-inch VC vinyl tile, which we did. So that's a kind of before and after of the upper floor. And then I kind of just for this did before and afters, because this was after we had emptied it, because it was, I mean, it was kind of like we walked into a time capsule. There was a gun room. There was so many things from casino night, and it was crazy. But and the bathroom, because it's built on a hill, there was a lot of water damage. So you can see we replaced the tile, and we tried to we left actually the floor tile, but we tried to match the wall tile as best as we could, just to keep the flavor of the building. And that's the boys' bathroom. The boys' bathroom we couldn't. We kept the floor, but we made it blue only because it's daycare, and we didn't want beige to confuse. It was like too close to the pink. You can go to the next one. Oh, that's it. I'm sorry. So now we that was our first building in Sullivan County, because Sullivan County is a child care desert. It's considered by the federal government. So happily, after we purchased this building and did the renovations that we did, we realized we couldn't have infants and toddlers because they can't have steps to the exterior. So we ended up purchasing a building on Broadway that we just had a ribbon cutting for on last Tuesday. And we also have we bought the Cablevision building in Liberty, and that's going to open July 1st. This building has been open for over a year. We had a summer program through Monticello School District last summer, and now it's a functioning daycare. And we have actually eight little ones attending there currently. So it's, and we did get the historic, we got the historic grant and we got the distinction. And I have to thank Jill and Shannon too, because I'm like, when I was reviewing everything, I'm like, I have emails from you from like 2017, like letting us know.
I remember.
So, and now because of this, like we actually purchased another building in Waterloo, New York, and that's from the 1800s. So we're going to do the same thing where we're going to keep the flavor of the building, I mean, the inside has changed several times since the original purpose, because it was a general store, I think. But we're just going to open it up, do daycare, and hopefully all these buildings that drew families and, you know, even to Monticello, drew people to Broadway, and we'll do the same thing in the coming years.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear that you've kind of created almost like a template for, you know, redevelopment of of turning historic properties into daycares and being able to utilize the tax credit programs and those grant programs that are resources to commercial businesses that are doing just that. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to flip through. Oh, there we go. All right. Now we're going to turn over to preserving a historic home. I'm going to introduce Tyler Barnett. He is an advertising and technology professional who has lived in New York State his entire life. He's been working on renovating the historic Hillig Castle property on 150 acres in Parksville for roughly 3 years. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Tyler, because these photos are awesome. So I'm excited to hear what you've been up to.
Sure. Thanks, Shannon. So, yeah, no, it's really comforting to listen to everyone's stories because, you know, there's a lot of ups and downs and surprises, and it's a long process. So, you know, seeing everyone speak, you can really see all that love come through, and you have to have that to really get to the other side. So that's really what happened with us. We fell in love. My husband and I fell in love with this property before we even saw it. We read about it in the listing, and then it sent us basically on this investigation to learn as much as we could about the castle. And a lot of the stories we didn't even know were true. And they all basically started with a man named Otto Hillig, who came to New York from Germany in the 1800s as a penniless immigrant. Eventually made his way to Sullivan County. He fell in love with photography and started a business selling photographs, postcards for a penny. And he actually has in Liberty on Main Street, his old office is there. You can still see it says Hillig on the sides of it, and that's where his studio was. It was one of the most, thorough, comprehensive studios, in this area. So Hillig had a lot of success doing, sort of strange things. He made one of the first transatlantic flights in history. in his own airplane, actually. He had one of the first automobiles in Sullivan County, one of the first automobiles in general. He made he drove to California and back. He set these little records, and that were so strange, that we were like, these have to be true because they were so detailed. He also became an assemblyman in New York State. In any case, so we really fell in love with the story about Otto, and then went back to his hometown, where he said that he was inspired to build this castle, which he did in the late 1920s. It was finished in the 30s, and when he died, he left it to the Masons, and the Masons really didn't want it. And it went into a period of disrepair. It was restored somewhat for a little while, and then sold, but for most of its life was neglected. So when we were finally able to visit the property, because it used to be on a bare bare mountaintop, Washington Mountain, we were really surprised in what bad condition it was in. That entire tower area was all hollowed out. There was no floors left. Most all the mortar and all the stones, a lot of things were falling off. The roof was original. In fact, it's the original metal roof. The only reason the building is still standing is because that roof protected it the whole time. There were no gutters or leaders, so everything beneath that really suffered. So when we bought the property about 3 years ago, we knew that basically everything had to be touched. But in doing so, we knew that we would have to bring in new material to do that. But we wanted to keep it as much as historic as we could. So that's the mission. And so we're well into that process now. So there was a lot of so basically the building was gutted. For the most part, you can see the inside there. There's steel running across it. The walls are 3 feet thick. It was built entirely of Neversink river stone from the Neversink River, which they hauled up originally with horses. We took it down to the concrete walls. In later pictures, the roof, that we talked about that saved it, that also was torn up. We had to tear that off. So eventually what was left is the stone walls. And even the stone walls, every stone had to be touched. Every stone was power washed, regrouted, tuck pointed, replaced. All the brick that you see, that was all drilled out, replaced. And it's being done so well that it's hard to sometimes see all the work that we've done, because it does look so original. So Hillig originally had stained glass. We're restoring that stained glass. For instance, all that brick that you see in this photo here, that's all new. The sills and everything, but they're all identical to what Hillig had. And that's a picture of the tower hollowed out, the way we got it. And so that's really sort of the story of the castle. Hopefully it will be finished in roughly a year, and we love it.
That's so exciting. I appreciate you presenting today, Tyler, because I know a lot of people, that's kind of one of those hidden gems of Sullivan County that has kind of some lore around it. Like you said, there's this Otto Hillig guy was really a fascinating individual. So I'm happy to hear that you guys have connected with his story and are preserving it for future generations. So it looks like Hope has her hand up. Hope, do you want to ask a question?
So I just want to say that from literally I'm across the street, but far away from where it is. But I know just from being there that there are people on that street who have so many stories to tell about that castle. So I don't know if like you're collecting them or doing anything, but I know they're, oh, you're across the street when I was a kid, blah, blah, blah. And we know this, and this was done there, and there were farms there, and it was there, you know, before they, and so planted all those trees, because at one point it was all
Right.
empty. And I don't think it's all folklore. I mean, there are people who were there and the stories of the castle. So I don't know if you're interested in knowing all those. And Marge from the Liberty Library was like, we need somebody to write a story, like a kid's story about the castle, a historical fiction kind of thing. So I'm just putting that out there to Tyler and
absolutely.
else that
yes, no, we're always interested. The same things happen with us. You know, Albert Bridgman is a neighbor. He has so much, you know, memorabilia and pictures. Everyone has a story. In fact, during its period when it was totally vacant, it basically became the hangout where people would go up there and party and smoke and hang out. And there's graffiti and so forth of their names and the years that they were there. I think a lot of people went on dates there. And so no, we're keeping a lot of those things, even those we didn't want to get rid of. So like whatever we could keep in the walls that to keep that the graffiti and so forth, you know, we didn't want that to go away. So, you know, it's still in the walls, even though we're covering it up. You know, there's a lot of that, you know, when we saved a lot of it too, to bring out in other areas. So we want all that history there. We know it's so connected to the town. So many people have stories of, like you said, with the trees, planting the trees there, or they would go up there and, you know, have lunch. And, you know, there's, you know, we love that people feel good that it's not going to, you know, that's going to be around for hundreds of more years. I mean, it's really like a tank. It did go into disrepair, but the building is now so strong that, you know, it's not at risk of you know, dereliction anymore.
I'm sure you could open like a website or a blog or something, and people would just be like, "This is my memories of, you know, the castle something, whatever, some catchy name."
Love that. Yeah, I love that you didn't just buy a house, but you bought this piece of history, this piece of the community, and you have, you know, you're not just getting the house, but you're getting the stories in the community that come with it. So I think that's got to be an interesting experience. I'm sure everyone else who's spoken has similar stories. Rachel, did you have your hand up, Rachel?
Yeah, you know, a couple of things. I'm just looking at the photo of the folks working on the restoration. I'm just wondering, do we have a sense yet of the economic impact of these renovations for local economy? You know, I grew up in Swan Lake and Liberty, and I remember when the economy dropped out, really starting seriously in the 80s. And there's got to be some really interesting figures coming out, like how many local jobs come with these renovations. It's a huge impact, I would imagine. And in addition, like Hope, I would love to have or work on a project. I'm a writer myself, work on a project with the local and oral histories and make that available to the kids and for the local history courses that they have at the elementary schools, you know? So Shannon, do we have a sense yet of like what the economic impact is across Sullivan County?
Locally, I would say I'm not sure on that statistic locally, but I do know that there's been on the national level, there's been a lot of economic studies done on the value of preservation jobs, because usually they're a lot more specialized. Like you can't necessarily just hire any mason. You have to hire a mason that has some of this experience with this restoration work. So you're creating, you know, kind of a really specific trade opportunity. And it's also a really great training opportunity too. So, you know, we're kind of, the more local contractors and local people that are working on these preservation projects, the more people they're training to kind of have that preservation ethos that we kind of talked about too, of like, when you're going into a property, think about how you can reuse the materials, how you can restore or preserve the materials. And I think there's, you know, I don't have a number to that yet, but I do think that we're kind of in the work that all of you are doing to restore these properties, I think there's tremendous value in the fact that you are allowing a kind of preservation trades workforce to grow. And I think that's really invaluable. But as far as, I know there's statistics as far as like heritage tourism brings in a lot more dollars than heritage tourists stay for 3 times as long or spend 3 times as much money. There's those kind of statistics out there. But as far as on the local scale, I don't have answers to that yet. Hope you had a comment or question.
Is this going to be used as for, if you don't mind me asking, and if it's inappropriate, let me know, as a private dwelling, as, I know you said you're preserving it, even though we're not, it's in the walls, sorry, like if those walls could talk, as any kind of like a museum annex or private home, and you and your husband are living the life in a castle.
So we want to, we're going to live there and become and move to the area. But we also want to, activate the property, whether it's like pumpkin picking or apple picking, and also, have, days, let's say, where it's, all right, pumpkin, and let's, go up to the castle and things like that. So have like, key dates and activities, that make sense, to open it up. But but we intend to, live there as a private residence, but still share it with everyone. Take down some of the trees that have grown up around it, so you can see it, see it a little better. And give it another life, but for the community to share in as well.
I do want to ask too, as kind of just in the interest of time, as kind of a final thought, and anyone feel free to contact us afterwards for any direct connections or questions as well, afterthoughts. But I do want to ask to our panelists, Tyler, Nicole, Neil, Jill, and Jean, thank you so much again. I want to ask, just as a closing, what advice would you give to someone who is considering rehabilitating a historic building or landscape, or someone who is entrenched in that process? Do you have any advice for those people? Anyone can jump in.
I would say, don't, just follow your heart. You only do it if you really love it. So, a lot of people will say, like, why are you doing this? This is crazy. And, sometimes you agree with them, but, listen to yourself.
Right,
Nicole,
and I would agree.
Go ahead, Jill.
I'd say be patient. If it doesn't happen right away, I think, like you said earlier, here at the county, we were trying to identify a buyer for Broadway Theater for decades, it seems. So it was exciting to finally be able to acquire it through the land bank and start to redevelop it. So it might not happen immediately, but if you're dedicated, it will hopefully happen.
When I started in my career in historic preservation, I had a mentor that would always talk about the 3 legs of historic preservation, which is time, money, and quality. Said you can't have all 3, so you have to choose which you're going to invest in. And my career has been it's been the time that you just have to be willing to take the time and to understand that you're going to have to take the time to achieve the goal of the quality that you want.
Nicole, did you have a comment too?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, my advice is obviously like, you have to make sure while it's usually a labor of love, it's also, really smart to do a ton of research before you dive head on into it, and make sure that everyone you're working with, from your architects to your masons, are familiar with this property, and just vet them in advance, particularly in Sullivan County, where it's hard. There's long timelines for people in specific niches, and who do really high quality work, and things are never as simple as they look. So just account for that. So that's all,
Jean, did you want to add anything too? Like, you had such a long process with that property between the historic district and all of that.
that the only thing I would add would actually just be to agree with all of the above. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of research, and it was very enjoyable to do and rewarding. So it's worth it.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate everyone taking the time today to have our first kind of Renaissance Roundtable, whether you're eating lunch or taking a break. I appreciate you stopping by and hearing about some of these things. I do want to mention, mark your calendars. Our next Renaissance Roundtable will be Wednesday, June 15th at noon. Same time, same place. And we're going to be doing putting trash in its place. And it'll be a panel of some creative strategies and people addressing litter, whether it's from the municipal level or the volunteer citizen litter picker level, and everything in between. We're going to have a panel chat about that topic. So details will be coming soon, and I hope you'll join us. And then, as always, feel free to connect with us, follow us on social media. That's where we get out the most of our information the quickest. And feel free to email us, give us a call. And I really appreciate everyone being here today and your enthusiasm. So happy National Preservation Month, and go forth and save some old buildings. Have a great
Thanks,
afternoon,
Shannon.
everyone.
Thank you.
Excellent
Thank you.
work.
This
Thanks,
was great.
everybody. It was great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.